You have been chasing the wrong thing your entire life. Not happiness exactly. You were told to chase happiness. By your parents, your culture, your social media feed, and every self-help book ever written. Be happy. Find happiness. Choose happiness. But what if happiness was never the point? What if the relentless pursuit of happiness is precisely what is making you miserable, and the thing you are actually searching for is something older, deeper, and far more honest than happiness has ever been? That is what we are going to explore today. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive, not most comfortable, not most entertained, not most relaxed, most alive. Chances are those moments were not particularly happy ones. They were meaningful ones. A challenge you rose to meet. A truth you finally said out loud. A loss that broke you open. A creative act that cost you something. A commitment you made knowing full well it would not be easy. Meaning and happiness are not the same thing. And somewhere, beneath the noise of a culture that has confused the two for generations, you already know this. The ancient Greeks understood the difference. Aristotle did not speak of happiness as a feeling to be pursued. He spoke of eudaimonia, a word that is almost always mistranslated as happiness, but actually means something closer to flourishing, to living well, to becoming fully what you are capable of being. Eudaimonia is not something that happens to you. It is something you build through purpose, through virtue, through the willingness to live in accordance with your deepest nature rather than your most immediate comfort. This distinction between happiness as a feeling and meaning as a way of living is one of the most important ideas philosophy has ever produced. And it is one that modern life has almost completely erased. We live in the most comfort-optimized civilization in human history, and we are, by most measures, among the most anxious, most medicated, most spiritually hollow generations that have ever existed. This is not a coincidence. The pursuit of happiness, when happiness is defined as the absence of discomfort, the presence of pleasure, and the management of anything that threatens to disturb your emotional equilibrium, creates a life that is technically comfortable and fundamentally empty. Because comfort is not the same as meaning. Pleasure is not the same as purpose. And the absence of pain is not the same as the presence of something worth living for. The psychologist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl observed something in the most unimaginable conditions imaginable: the Nazi concentration camps of the Second World War. He watched people die. He watched people survive. And what he noticed was not that the survivors were the strongest or the healthiest or the most fortunate. What he noticed was that the people who survived were the ones who had a reason to survive. A purpose that extended beyond themselves. A meaning that made the suffering bearable, not by removing it, but by making it mean something. Frankl attributed this observation to Nietzsche, and it became the foundation of his entire life's work. The insight that meaning is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the difference between a life that endures and a life that dissolves under pressure. The happiness trap is this: when you pursue happiness directly, when you optimize your life for comfort, pleasure, and the avoidance of difficulty, you systematically remove the very conditions that make meaning possible. You remove challenge. You remove risk. You remove the friction that shapes you. And in doing so, you create a life that feels safe and means nothing. Viktor Frankl entered Auschwitz in 1944. He lost his wife, his parents, his brother. He lost the manuscript of his life's work, a book he had spent years writing, on the day he arrived. He lost everything that happiness, by any conventional definition, requires. And in that darkness, he discovered something that no amount of comfort could have taught him. He discovered that the last of human freedoms, the one thing that cannot be taken from you regardless of your circumstances, is the freedom to choose how you respond to what happens to you, to choose the meaning you assign to your suffering, to decide, even in the most brutal conditions imaginable, what your existence is for. This is not optimism. This is not positive thinking. This is something far more radical and far more honest. Frankl called it logotherapy, from the Greek word logos, meaning meaning. The therapeutic approach built on the understanding that the primary human drive is not the pursuit of pleasure, as Freud suggested, nor the pursuit of power, as Adler suggested, but the pursuit of meaning. He wrote that a human being can endure almost any suffering if that suffering is understood to be in service of something. A parent endures exhaustion for a child. A scientist endures years of failure for a discovery. A person in grief endures the pain of loss, because the depth of their pain is a measure of the depth of their love. Suffering without meaning is unbearable. Suffering with meaning is transformative. And this is where Frankl's insight cuts deepest into the modern condition. We live in a culture that has tried to eliminate suffering entirely. We have built systems, technologies, and entire industries dedicated to the removal of discomfort. And in doing so, we have not made life more meaningful. We have made it harder to find meaning at all. You cannot chase happiness directly any more than you can fall asleep by trying very hard to fall asleep. It arrives as a consequence of living well, of pursuing meaning, of engaging fully with your existence, of choosing depth over comfort when the two are in conflict. So, if happiness is the wrong goal, what is the right one? Frankl's answer was meaning. Aristotle's answer was eudaimonia, flourishing. Nietzsche's answer was becoming, the ongoing act of growing beyond who you currently are. Camus, characteristically, suggested something more defiant: to create meaning in full awareness that the universe offers none, and to find in that act of creation the only authentic response to existence. These are different words for something that points in the same direction. A life oriented not toward feeling good, but toward being something, toward contributing something, toward understanding something more deeply than you did yesterday, toward relationships that ask something real of you rather than merely validating what you already believe, toward work that matters to you even when, especially when, it is difficult. Meaning is found in three places according to Frankl: in what you give to the world, your work, your creativity, your contribution; in what you receive from the world, beauty, truth, love, experience fully inhabited; and in the stance you take towards suffering that cannot be avoided, the dignity with which you bear what cannot be changed. This third source of meaning is the most radical and the most neglected, because it suggests that even the worst things that happen to you, the losses, the failures, the griefs that seem to serve no purpose, can be made meaningful by how you carry them, not by pretending they are good, but by refusing to let them be merely terrible. This is what the pursuit of happiness at all costs cannot give you, because happiness requires that bad things not happen. Meaning survives them. This is what quiet thinker exists to sit with, not to hand you answers, but to open the space where the questions that actually matter can finally be heard. I want to be careful here not to make meaning sound like another burden, another thing to achieve, Another way to feel inadequate if you are not doing it correctly. Meaning is not a grand project. It does not require a dramatic life overhaul or a heroic sacrifice or a sudden revelation. It requires a shift in orientation, a small but fundamental change in the question you are asking of your own life. Instead of, "Am I happy right now?" ask, "Am I living in a way that I could find meaningful? Am I giving my attention to things that matter to me beyond their ability to make me feel good? Am I willing to endure difficulty in service of something I genuinely care about?" These questions will not make you immediately happier. They will make you more honest. And from that honesty, slowly, imperfectly, without guarantee, something that resembles a meaningful life begins to take shape. Aristotle understood that eudaimonia is not a state you arrive at. It is a practice, a way of moving through the world that is always being refined, always being tested, always asking more of you than comfort alone would require. The irony, and Frankl noted this explicitly, is that people who orient their lives toward meaning tend to experience more genuine happiness than people who pursue happiness directly. Not because meaning is a better strategy for getting happy, but because a life of meaning is, in the deepest sense, a life well lived. And a life well lived carries its own quiet, unforced satisfaction that no amount of pleasure-seeking has ever reliably produced. You were not born to be happy. You were born to be alive, fully, honestly, presently alive, in whatever circumstances you find yourself. To give something to the world that only you can give. To receive something from the world that only your particular attention can notice. To carry what cannot be avoided with a dignity that makes it mean something. Happiness will come and go. It always has. It always will. But meaning, the quiet, steady sense that your existence is pointed at something real, that is something you build. One honest choice at a time. One moment of genuine attention at a time. One willingness to endure difficulty in service of something you actually believe in at a time. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz. He lost everything the world considers necessary for happiness. And he spent the rest of his long life telling anyone who would listen that meaning is not what you find after the suffering ends. Meaning is what you find inside the suffering. And that is what makes it survivable. I want to leave you with one question to sit with. If you stopped measuring your life by how happy it makes you feel, and started measuring it by how meaningful it actually is, what would you need to change? Leave it in the comments. I read every one. If this opened something in you, Quiet Thinker has more waiting. One exploration like this every week for the part of you that refuses to stop questioning. Until next time, stay with the questions.